Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful installment of your very favorite talk show on Internet Radio. We're here once again with the Cherilyn Lee Health Show. And I'd like to present to you your favorite talk show host, Dr. Cherilyn Lee.
And I want to thank you once again for being here with me, my wonderful co-host, Belinda Foster, who is also my publicist. Thank you so much for being here today. And we have a wonderful guest and that I'm so excited about.
Absolutely.
We're just so excited. And I just want to say, because I have his book in front of me, it's just amazing. But we're going to get to that. I'm just so excited about the book. We're going to get to that later. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in today to the Cherilyn Lee Health Show, and where we try to share information to help us to have a much better world and to be much happier people through this wonderful journey called life.
Yes.
Okay, so our guest today, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Absolutely. We are so happy and proud to have Dr. Roy Dittmann on the show today. He is the author of A Revolutionary Organic Approach to Have an Organic Child. Welcome, Dr. Dittmann. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. And how to conceive an extraordinary baby in a toxic world. We kind of came up, Dr. Dittmann, actually you came up with that topic. And we're going to kind of jump in. Your background is amazing. I think with a 1-hour show, we want to give our audience as much information as possible. Your background is so extensive that people are so savvy on the internet, they go and they look it up anyway.
Good.
Wouldn't you say? But you have a very extensive background, and I am so honored to have you as a guest today. Belinda and I are very honored to have you today.
Yes.
With us on the show.
Yeah. Well, it's my pleasure to be on today, and I'm so happy that you can share this with all of your audience. And it's a team effort. We need to get the word out today about the problem of birth defects in our children, and it's a long-standing problem. Rachel Carson spoke about this to Congress back in the 50s. She warned us that this would happen because of the overuse of pesticides in the Central Valley and California and so forth. And in the book, one of the things I talk about, I wasn't sure if I should talk about this and get political on people, but
no, this is a show that we get very political because we want people to know, and we want them to know the truth, and I always leave my guests with an alternative. Not so gloom and doom, but we have to have an alternative and stay healthy, because we can't walk around living in a glass bubble.
Exactly, and I want to be authentic with people, and we can't separate some of these issues anymore, and we have to. I wanted to write an authentic book that people can use practically every day, and that anybody can use. I grew up originally in the poor projects in Culver City, and I understand what it is to have your mom working at Winchell's, and we struggled for many years and just living on refried beans and tortillas, and so some of the greatest people in history were born from impoverished families, and but in today's world, the realities have not quite hit us, and they are starting to hit us, to understand how toxic and how dangerous it is today to conceive, such that I would seriously warn people, it's not safe to conceive anymore unless you prepare your body, both a man and woman, before conception. And I can't emphasize that enough, because today we're talking about having children. We're talking about these concepts and principles, and it's somewhat abstract until you actually have a child. And you see that soul and those eyes looking right up at you. And at that moment, it goes from a concept to an existence, what I call an existence, reality. It hits you, and in that moment, you realize this is a real human being, and this is our inheritance. But every baby is all of our inheritance. It's not as they say, unless you can see God in everybody, you don't see God in anybody. And we have to understand that every child that is being born with birth defects is our loss, our collective loss. It's a serious national emergency, in my opinion.
Oh, I feel that way too.
And so, but I think Washington D.C. and Wall Street and big corporations and the people that own this country, so to speak, they don't have that sense of urgency like the people who have had children with birth defects. And the truth is, we think of children with birth defects, mostly have been hidden from our view. They're institutions, the severe ones, in all societies, actually.
Yes.
And in today's world, we do get better care for them than it used to be. But the problem is that almost all children today, realistically, have some kind of subtle, undiagnosed birth defect. In fact, we were probably born with some kind of subtle, undiagnosed birth defect, but we weren't aware of it. So that's the kind of issues I'm trying to bring. And having marched with Cesar Chavez when I was 10, my father, had a commune near USC when he was a professor of physics at USC, and I grew up in this very politically active family where, almost anybody who was anybody during the 60s and 70s would visit our house, and I had the privilege of learning from them personally and understanding them, listening to them, and wonderful people, great humanitarians, great philosophers, great scientists and doctors, and Nobel laureates and so forth. And one of the things that happened to me, and I communicate this in the book, because I want people to really understand this is a human issue. It's not like a scientific issue where we debate the minutiae endlessly and publish myopic papers on endless, abstract concepts in junk science. We're way beyond that point now. We have a serious problem. So what I communicate in one of the chapters is what occurred for me, what created this huge transformation. Because when I sat down and I meditated and contemplated, why am I writing this book, really? What's this about for me? And what's at stake for humanity? I said, I have to connect to every person's soul out there.
Yes.
I want to hit them right in the heart and say, this is not about me, it's not about even, it's really about who we are as a future possibility human, the future human, whether we go up or down. And we have to take a stand at some point and say, enough. We have to take a stand for future generations or not. And do we really want to put profits ahead of humanity? That's the bottom line question. But where it hit me, Cherilyn, when I was 10, and this is a really hard story for me even to tell to this day, and it's one of the things I avoided, but a lot of people encouraged me. They said, you have to tell that story. Where it really hit me was when I was 10. I was with my father in a field near Delano with Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. And I wandered down this road, and there was farm workers there, and they're living under horrible conditions. And I saw a wooden shack, and I went over there. And I looked in the shack, and I saw the children. And even to this day, it's really hard to tell, because I had to look away, and tears were rolling down my face.
Oh my!
And I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was trying to hide. I was ashamed of myself because I was a boy. Boys aren't supposed to cry, and I didn't even know why I was crying. It just, something hit me all of a sudden like a avalanche of emotion. I felt every emotion all at once. And on the way back, driving to LA, I said, Dad, why are those children like that? He said, because they pick grapes and there's pesticides on the grapes.
Oh, my
children
goodness.
Are born with these birth defects. And we had a long conversation. I said, I think it was that point in my life I decided I had to, be a doctor or do something. 'Cause I realized that with all the science and doctors and amazing, brilliant people we had, nothing was being done about this. And it was tolerable for these,
Yeah, no one, not to cut you off, but no one has ever talked about that. I mean, we had people in all type of fields, cotton fields, this field, and all type of fields, and we never talked about what happened to those people. who were
Yes.
directly affected with the pesticides and herbicides. I mean,
Yes.
nobody talks about that, and it's amazing that you, and it's sad that you had to see this, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just so sad that no one reached out to them and say, this is what we're going to do to try to help you, that this is where they had to live and to live in that type of world. And for them, that was probably their norm because they probably didn't even know anything else.
Yes, exactly, and they're hidden from view. In many countries in the world, mentally retarded children and autistic children and deaf children and just children that have simple problems are put in the same institutions with the criminally insane. They're all put together.
Absolutely.
Some of this is changing. But a lot of people don't know about this. I've visited institutions in Romania and Greece and other places, and it's horrific. These children are just deaf, and they're in there, like in this horrible jail, chained to things. But things have improved since then. But going back to the story, what really hit me is that we must do something about this that's practical. And it's not tolerable anymore. At some point, you say, this cannot exist, so we can eat a grape. So we went back to our house, and I said, Dad, I have to do something. I want to do something to help those kids. He says, well, let's organize a boycott, at all the supermarkets just to boycott grapes. And so we did, and we won these victories. The great news is we would win all these victories. But today the problem is even worse. So we, in those days, I realized a grape wasn't just a grape, but it had great implication, because I didn't understand when I was eating a grape that I was supporting that. And so Cesar Chavez was really marching and organizing for even the most basic of human standards, of living conditions, of quality of life, of health care for these people. But they were all hidden from our view, and in our conventional society. I would go back to my school at Culver City High School and say, or junior high or whatever in those days. And later on, I was still talking about this and lecturing about this. And because I was an anti-war activist in those days, but it just wasn't real for people. It didn't have reality. So,
right.
What this book is about is giving people a real pathway, saying, look, if you follow these instructions, I know it's a lot in this book, but I wanted it to be very comprehensive and thorough, and to give anybody can do this, is the message here. And we can, transform how we conceive, birth, and raise our children. And that must be a minimal standard for doctors, for government officials, for educators, and for parents. We must demand that we have minimal standards. Just like Cesar Chavez said, this is intolerable for people to live like this, like animals. People treat their poodles better than they do human beings in some countries, and that's not okay. So, so there's my political. That's my political statement, because I think it is very much interrelated. It doesn't really work otherwise until we see how it's all intertwined in our lives.
Most definitely. Mm-hmm. And I know in chapter 37, you have from manhood to fatherhood. And since you were speaking on this journey and with your dad, I haven't had a chance to, it's such a large book. I have not had a chance to read it yet. Just kind of go through it. And before we end the show, I want you to give some of those wonderful recipes. They was just phenomenal. That we're going to give out, so we can leave our listening audience with something they can start doing now. And most important, I love the fact how you spoke about the mother and the father going through a cleanse, and we sort of know that as holistic practitioners, but in most cases, I see the patients once they're pregnant. Mm-hmm. So very few people go through a whole preparation, but now that the child is here, we have to do things to keep that child healthy also, since it was born into a toxic world itself.
Yeah. Yes, and it's really economically, smart and intelligent to understand the wisdom of preparing preconception, because any money you spend detoxifying and strengthening your body and getting your body prepared before conception is, is saving you hundreds more dollars times, 100 more times, 1,000 more times money later on. You know, to take care of a severely autistic child or a mentally retarded child, really in a lifetime, is millions of dollars, and at least it's hundreds of thousands, you know, with even minimal standards of care. And so when I see children that are born autistic, I think that was not necessary. That didn't have to happen. That's the tragedy of it. And it's all about us educating people. And that's why I appreciate you getting the word out to people, because as many people as find this out, that's how many people will have a healthy baby and not a child born with birth defects.
Yes. You know, I'm sorry.
I just tell people you have to be a little bit skeptical about what doctors tell you. You know, I realize that they're well-trained in their specific areas of specialty, but unfortunately we don't have perinatal specialists today.
We don't, not especially in holistic. And we look at, you know, being born into a toxic world, but if you're in a toxic relationship, I see something here in your book that I think is really important too, because people can say, you know, this is a love child versus a child that was born not in love, and you have romantic love versus stable love. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is that oftentimes people fall in love, so to speak, and they get, but that's kind of like an obsessive kind of love where people, I joke about this. I say, well, you know, with men, I said, look, you know, love is two-way. If it's just you obsessed with somebody, that's called stalking. It's not love. So it's a two-way thing, first of all. But
that's another book.
Say that again.
Exactly. So, you know, we have to consider that true love and that energy of the love energy is so powerful. It's more important than any pill. I mean, this is just chemistry, right? And this is important, but the higher neurochemistry and peptides that are secreted by us when we're in love are so youthening and enlivening and balancing our hormones. They just do amazing things, but we only secrete those when we're in love. And that's why men, you see all these poetry and paintings and musical compositions and, you know, songs are written about women. That's what men, we're romantic. And so, you know, but I tell men, I said, you know, you want to evoke a response from the woman. So so it's there's this energy between you that is miraculous and magical, and it's beyond, you know, description by science even. You know, we can't quantify love, or you can't do a study on love, but it's there and we all feel it, you know. Every time we feel that song driving down the street and we're in love and we're happy and we're in love with God and nature and everyone. And that's probably the most important thing, because if you have that, then everything else follows.
Yes, but love and conception, that is so powerful. Mm-hmm. During conception, that a person actually love each other. I mean, we do the detoxing, and it's to me, there's layers of preparing the body for a baby. And the first, to me, is they love each other. And I've been around people who have told me they have siblings, and they found out that, you know, one of the siblings was actually the love child. I mean, they was actually preparing, they were in love, where the other one sort of just, you know, it sort of just happened, the pregnancy. And you can see the difference in the people or kids, or even now they're adults, and you can see the difference in them even now.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we as human beings, we're always looking for reasons to love or like someone or have a crush on somebody, right? Mm-hmm. But really, there is no reason. I mean, if we really are honest and authentic about it, there's no reason to love. You know, as soon as you start doing that, you're in your mind and you're in your ego and you're in all the justifications, and then it's endless. But we are love, and everyone is love. And when someone's in love with you or you're in love with them, you stop judgment in your mind, actually. And that's where the magic comes in, is then all this is pouring into the universe. You start actually observing what a wonderful universe we live in. And so my intention in the book is to address this hidden factor that no one ever talks about, is how love and higher neural brain chemistry and our hormones all work together also to conceive and birth healthy children. Because when children are born in a context of love and happiness and celebration and joy,
Yes.
It makes all the difference from, being born in an environment of violence and poverty and suffering and misery. And so we are all responsible for that. And it all starts with ourselves, And, I tell men, it sounds real simple, but Michael Jackson said it. He said, we got to look at the man in the mirror first.
So true.
Absolutely.
So true. And you have things that would have a negative effect on the sperm, on the health of a sperm.
Well, yes, I think that all of these things are downloaded into the sperm.
Yes.
All the evidence is there scientifically that because sperm is made in real time, it is communicating the morphogenetic field, the energy of our chakras, our subtle anatomy like the meridians, and all of our emotional and mental, rigidity or stuckness is all being communicated, as well as the chemistry and as well as the other things that we know sperm communicates, the education. There's a lot of evidence I point out in the book that a man's education, his knowledge, his wisdom, his experience is communicated through the sperm. So the older he gets, the more is being communicated. If he's continuing his wisdom and his experience, he's becoming wiser with age. It's very important that men cultivate that within themselves. So that passes on to your child. And the evidence is all there that actually happens now. We used to think of genes as, hardwired, and everything was our genes, and that's why all these weird, eugenic, racist theories came in. That's all been proven. That's why all that Nazi nonsense came in, because people saw, look at this, we're smarter than these people, but they didn't look at the wisdom or intelligence that was there. They just said, okay, we can make better machines, or we can do this. But see, that's not what real human life is about. It's more like, I think art is actually closer to what real human existence communicating, to each other is about, more than just mathematics or hard sciences, actually. And so there's all these weird racial eugenic theories were based upon gene science in those days, which was incomplete. What today we know is that the epigenetic environment, the environment around the cell, is what informs the genes. So think of it like, you got a hard drive computer. That's your genes. That's what we inherited from our past, from all of our ancestors, which we're grateful for. And then we can put any software in there. So if you put love in there, what do you get? Whoa, you get somebody like a Stevie Wonder, or, somebody who's like communicating love to the world. I remember going to a Stevie Wonder concert when I was a teenager, and I was way up. It was like the farthest row back. I got way up there. I felt like I was going to get, altitude sickness. But then I was looking down at Stevie Wonder.
Not the nosebleed, huh? Okay.
Did you have binoculars?
I did. No, actually, but my friend did. I went with a friend who gave me a free ticket, but I felt so much love from his song. I stood up, and he goes, "What are you doing? You're standing up." I'm like, I just feel like this wave of love. I was like, I wasn't high on any drugs or anything. I was just like feeling his energy. I was like,
yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It was just so powerful because he was communicating, this amazing feeling, and you could feel it generating, just going around this huge, auditorium, And, so, who we are as human beings is to communicate love. I put a lot of, technical, scientific stuff because I know I'm going to be challenged on a lot of things here scientifically, and I want to make sure that I have my ducks in a row, so to speak, scientifically. But let's not fool ourselves. It's all of who we are that we want to communicate and we want our children to inherit. And so the epigenetic environment that we're communicating And when we make a baby, when we tell, when we tell our wife or our girlfriend or our lover, we say, I really love you. I'm totally in love with you. And then that evokes response for them. It's like I call it the ping pong effect. It just keeps going up and up and up. It gets higher and higher. There's no limit to it, actually. Only to limit in our own mind. But that energy is like it's more powerful than the concept of chi. It empowers. You're empowering your child when you conceive under those circumstances with this miraculous, magical, undefinable energy. It's real, and I see this. I see this all the time. I see the children born like this, and I look at them like, whoa! It blows my mind every time I see them, because you can see their eyes, you can see who that being is, and you're like, whoa! This is like what life's about, right?
Oh yes, it really is, and you just feel better. I mean, even a smile can really, it does something to the organs, even when you smile for yourself. Even just a smile. So making the lips go up, and they said, I read somewhere, even if you take a pencil and put it in your mouth, it forces you to kind of smile, and it actually helps with your organs.
Oh, that's great.
That's why I forgot what I read.
That's true, yeah.
Because sometimes I don't walk around smiling. I know Belinda does. She walks around smiling.
I need to cheer up. No.
I used to tell her sometimes, how do you're just always happy. I'm going through this and you're just happy. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
I want you to stay happy, though.
Well, that's great. I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's a big part. I've taught courses called Healing Through Humor, and I teach courses on what really lights you up in life, because our mind lies to us. But I put people on video, and then I paid it back to them. And I look at you. When you're talking about doing that project, you look 15 years older. And they're like, yeah, whoa, that's scary. I said, now look at when you talk about going and just singing. And it's like, oh, my God, I look 15 years younger when I talk about singing. I'm like, there you go. I mean, it's right there. You can see it. And your brain makes an automatic shift in that moment. And people say, how is that possible? I mean, you didn't treat me. And you see people's faces straighten out. You ever seen people like one side of their face is like dropped and the other side it's very different from the other side. Mm-hmm. You see that actually balance out in an instant. The face balance out. You go, oh my God, that would have taken 38 cranial osteopathic treatments to go with that, And they just go out and did karaoke one night and it's all even, Yeah. So I'm like,
well, I hate to make this point, but we had an election and where someone lost, and you saw in his face right away. That's not really, maybe not appropriate right here, but in his face right away when he lost the election, he just looked totally. You saw it in his face. I mean, I just leave it right there. Okay.
Well, that's true. You can see those. I do. I notice those things. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And it's amazing when someone is happy. It's totally different, but it's making a difference in your own health. I watch that with I work with a lot of cancer patients, and the ones that are when they come into knowing that this is what's going on, and they were already kind of in a happy place. I have a gentleman right now who is, even my own grandfather, who is 99, he just turned 99, was diagnosed some 25, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's still happy. He hums, and humming is very healing too. He hums and he's happy, and he lost his wife, my grandmother, in 2010. And he said he's getting married again. So,
wow.
And he's 99, but he's happy, But unfortunately, for me, but for him it wasn't. He became happy when he was put in a hospital. He said, because I'm around all these people. He wasn't happy at home. I guess it wasn't enough people for him, just my grandmother. But he became a very happy person. I remember him in a senior citizen place one day. He actually kind of had a syncopal episode. He kind of passed out for a minute, got dizzy. They took him to the hospital, and I called. He said, oh, no, don't take me back home. Leave me right here. These are really nice, happy people at this hospital. So, because my grandmother was not a real, jovial person and laughed a lot and those type things. So he enjoyed being in hospitals because he said people were most happier there.
Yeah, wow.
So
Great
we
story.
will tend to gravitate where we are happy, and I'm just grateful I'm in a field that I thoroughly enjoy. It actually brings me joy to see people heal, and
Right.
uh, and I'm
Well,
really
I'm so
grateful.
glad we're talking about this, because on all the other shows, like, I have to go all in this like really deep science and challenging all these little, studies and all that, and that's totally valid, and I totally agree with that. It's just that, I think everything follows from what we're talking about today. Real love, real happiness. Because once you make a commitment to your future child, I tell fathers, it goes from abstract to existence. It brings you into reality. You're back and you're grounded in your feet in the sand again. And, fathers, for this whole area, this whole domain of childbirth, men default to the woman, and rightly so in a certain sense, because we don't breastfeed, we're not giving birth to a baby, we're more detached from all of that. And so I say, men, the way you can relate for the love of your future child is by visualizing. I think Robert Redford pegged it in his movie The Natural, where he shows at the end of his movie him throwing the baseball to his son in these golden fields of barley and so forth. And this is the way men, we visualize it. That's our happiness. Like, oh, playing baseball, or football with our son, or taking our daughter to the first prom. We always visualize them fully grown, and that's our imagination. And whereas women, they love those beginning stages where they're breastfeeding and they're so cute, these adorable little babies, and but we can't relate to that. And I said, let's be honest, we can't relate to any of that. We don't do any of that. So we're like the support mechanism. So I say to them, look, what you do before conception actually is so important. If you look at the animal husbandry world, animals, like the stallion is more important than the mare. You see the quality of your sperm makes all the difference in the outcome of the birth. It's going to make it easier labor. If you look at the outcomes of autism and
No,
birth
just
defects,
back up a second. So you're telling me the sperms is going to make it easier for the woman during her delivery?
absolutely, because you see, even though the woman's egg is it kind of compensates for the defects in the sperm, and mostly see 33 to 43% of all miscarriages and birth defects are tied to defective sperm. And we didn't know this until recently, as more and more studies are being done. And different sperm have different functions. And so there's all these different things I point out in the book that there's success in numbers. For instance, a lot of we are trained to think by the media that all you need is one sperm and one egg, and that's true to conceive. But there's some wisdom in nature we're leaving out when we bypass nature's wisdom and say, 500 sperm or 300 million. 500 million or 300 million sperm is what it used to be in your grandmother's and my grandfather's time. It was a lot more sperm count, and that made a healthier child, because it's like the difference between doing a marathon and you have 20,000 runners compared to just 20. You have a better selection and faster runners, and those babies that were the fastest swimmers are the ones who are conceived in birth. So the man's sperm is really a huge part of it, and men just are not aware of this. They default, they give this whole domain over the woman. So, oh, that's your job, and I'll just go out and I'll work and I'll do my stuff. And, as I like to say to men, I said, preconception preparation isn't just a function of like buying the woman, or your wife a margarita anymore. It's just not. It's just not reality anymore. It's not going to work. In our world today, maybe our grandfathers could get away with that, but we're living in generational accumulation of pesticides. These pesticides accumulate in the sperm-generating cells and the testicles. They accumulate generationally. They're increasing with each generation at frightening amounts in the ovaries, in the eggs. So we're not aware of these things because they're hidden from us. But more and more we're learning that this is the case. So And the good news is we can eliminate these toxins and these pesticides and other heavy metals and other dangerous birth defect causing substances from our bodies before we conceive, and that pretty much guarantees that you're going to have a successful outcome. And so I tell people, I said, excuse the large size of the book. It's like it's a door stopper. It's
it is.
It's a huge book, but I wanted to show something that I said, when I told my staff, I said, look, I have to put something out that is fully 100% authentically everything I know, so that when someone reads this book and they want the answers, it's in this book. They can use this book as a guide, no matter how much money they have or their resources, to really have successful birth outcomes. And so I loaded it with everything I could possibly think of. Now, even then, I took out a couple hundred pages. I compromised. But
really?
Oh, it's about 1,000 pages. Yes, I know. But it is so. And then you have referenced everything from you have so many wonderful recipes. Which before the show end, and if you just tuned in to the Cherilyn Lee Health Show, you're listening to Dr. Roy Dittmann, and my co-host is Belinda Foster, and I'm Dr. Cherilyn Lee. So I want to thank you so much as you're just now tuning in. Our topic today is how to conceive an extraordinary baby in a toxic world, and then how to keep them healthy thereafter. Because we have to keep them healthy after. Because a lot of our listeners are maybe like me. I'm not having any more children. But we want to know, how do we keep our children healthy? If you have children, eventually your children are going to have children. So let's start getting them healthy. They might be very young now, but they grow up.
I find there's an inspirational, the whole book is incredible. I'm looking at a quote right here, which just really is amazing. It says, as a future mother or father who is committed to having an extraordinary child, this should thrill you. It means that you can powerfully and positively impact your future child's health. I love that quote.
Mm.
Yeah.
He said, like he didn't know he wrote it.
I wrote that.
Yes, you did.
Who said that? Well, yeah, it's so great to see parents do this. It inspires me. I love doing this. It's I feel like Schultz, the guy, the author of Peanuts. He was a cartoonist, and they said, "Well, why do you do this?" He says, To me, it's not work. I love doing this.
Yes.
But I love doing this too because, I can't think of a more tangible, incredible, miraculous, a happy thing to do than help people have these extraordinary babies. They don't come to me disappointed ever and say, oh my God, I'm disappointed with this. It's just they always say the same thing. They say, oh my God, how did we have such an amazing baby? We're just average looking and we're just average intelligence. How does our baby come out like this? I said, that's what happens when you prepare before conception. And older women sometimes, I've worked with women, they're, premenopausal.
So what age are you thinking of? Remember, you have a grandmother on the one end.
and I, they're surprised because I say, what I found out is that many cultures, the women have perfectly healthy babies right before menopause. And why is it that we can't? And the difference is they really understand from experience how to prepare. And again, I see that older women have much healthier babies if they prepare before conception, and they have their mate prepare as well before conception, than the younger women who don't. And it contradicts what the prevailing wisdom says about this. But the converse is true. I mean, younger women have younger eggs, and the eggs are in your womb from the time you're 5 months in your mother's womb. So think of it this way, when whatever you're consuming during your pregnancy, you're already affecting or have affected 3 generations. There's
now,
your daughter.
Repeat that again.
Well, for instance, say, for instance, you have a daughter, you have a girl baby, you're 5 months pregnant. At that moment, that daughter has her eggs in her womb. So her eggs, and then you have your daughter in your womb, and then you. There's 3 generations there that you're affecting. And, a lot of people don't think about this. I said, so you're in a very powerful position to either negatively or positively influence, yourself, your daughter, and her daughter, your granddaughter or grandchild in the future. Right now, you can make a huge difference. It can go either way. What the good news is Cherilyn, is that we can do so many powerful things to enhance, our child's outcome, and that's the fun part. So I try to get, people out of the red zone, so to speak, the toxic zone, the cleanup part, and all the hard part, the cleaning up our toxic emotions and our past relationships, forgiving everybody for everything they ever did to us. And
yes.
And our ancestors and all that stuff. You know how families are.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
get beyond all that, and then I said, then you're in the black zone. You're in the free air zone where you can do all these amazing things to enhance your baby's development. And that's the fun part. So let's get you there as quickly as possible. And so that's part of what this book is about. Because once people get to that area, they have a blast. They really get into it. The fathers get into it. And you see the fathers go from one extreme to the other, almost always. They go to oh, no, I don't want to do any of that. Oh, that's her, just talk to her about that. And then once they get engaged, oh boy, they really get into it. And the outcomes are extraordinary. And it's so inspiring to see that because, I get to see these kids grow up. Now, I've been doing it for 30 years, and I said some of these kids have gone to college now. And you see these kids, and they come back to the office, and it's so touching to see these children growing up, and they get it. They're like, Dr. Dittmann, I want to do this too. I get it. I grew up like this, and everyone should be doing this. So, they come back and tell me how important it is. I'm like, really? I said that in those days? Okay.
Because you have such a young voice. Your voice is very, very soothing, but it's very young. It sounds very... a very young voice, and you could tell the way you live your life and the things you're saying. I mean, what you're doing. Now, you have a section in your book, Naturally Addressing ED. So what are you doing for that, for men's sexual enhancement?
Well, there's a lot that can be done for that. I spent a lot of time studying and lecturing about male and female reproductive health, and I studied with people from Sri Lanka. What's interesting that I found with Sri Lankan medicine, it's a 10,000-year-old medicine, and they have these gold leaves that are in the London Museum that have, they're in ancient Sinhalese, but they have all this stuff that predated, acupuncture in China and Persia and India even, and the Buddha lived there. Very fascinating, culture, and they have information on how to take care of your prostate and male reproductive health. It's amazing. They just don't have, the people who live this natural way in this what's called Deha Dhamma, it means divine body care, they just don't have prostate enlargement. They don't have prostate infections like we do. They don't have the prostate cancer. They don't have the erectile dysfunctions like we have. And I was, my teacher, Dr. Warnasurya, who passed away about 2 years ago, at the age of 98, and his father lived to be 107. He was still sexually active, and he was a very happy man, and he would say, I don't understand you guys in America. Why do you have these prostate problems? And he just couldn't figure it out. It was like just strange to him.
Yeah.
He would treat a lot of celebrities. I would always see when I'd go over his house, he'd have always very famous people there, and they were, they would be amazed too. But it was like, these ancient cultures have wisdom that we don't. And so much in the West, we think because we can, fly to the moon or we can make better widgets or something, that we're smarter than everybody. But that's kind of our arrogance here. And one of the faults of Western civilization is not acknowledging and recognizing the wisdom that exists in all cultures. And I was fortunate. My father would take me at a very young age all over the world, different countries, when he would be doing, research or being a professor in different countries. And I got exposure to Sri Lanka, for instance, when he was about to go there, when I was about 11 or 12. And he would make me learn the language and live in the village. I had to live just like they did. He would not allow me to be an American. I'm like, no, you're Sri Lankan now, or you're Yugoslav, or you're Russian. I had to learn their language. I had to do it everything. He would put me in a village with no electricity, no running water, and we had to live exactly and work every day like they did. And he said, no, you're not going to be a spoiled brat kid American. You're gonna learn how they live. And at that time, I was like, oh my God, this is like, this is hard. But I'm so grateful now that he taught me those lessons, because I learned a lot about wisdom of people and got to learn from them directly.
Yes.
One-on-one.
Yes.
And so back to the erectile dysfunction question, the reason why I told that story is because, see, sometimes we just don't see that some of the greatest things are right in front of us. And it's our mind that keeps us from seeing that.
Yes.
And because we go, oh, we're smart, and my doctor went to Stanford, and my doctor knows this and that. But, okay, well, can they shrink an enlarged prostate?
No.
I don't know, because these people in Sri Lanka know how to do that, and they've had 10,000 years of experience doing it. They must know something. So there's kind of an illusion sometimes we get into. Now, I'm not against science. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally in favor of science. But if we really look at the intention of science and spiritual practice, no matter what religion someone is in, and no matter what area of specialty of science or medicine someone is in, that the intention is exactly, precisely the same. And that is the inquiry into truth of who we are and what the universe is. And that's where we need to keep it. Because real science means we're inquiring into what's happening. What's happening right now? Who are we? What is our role in the universe? What's life about? Those are the critical questions. And I raised all my children to ask those questions. I said, as soon as you start judging other people, that knows you're in the danger zone.
Yes, you are.
You're not looking at reality anymore. You're inside of your mind, and you're not being on the ground. You're not being in existence. Because existence is just only about communication. That's all the universe is always doing. If you look at bees and ants and animals and the world and stars and universes, it's all just communication.
Right. I don't mean to cut you off, but I am for just a moment. There is a question that came over the internet. Belinda, you want to, and basically you'd just be repeating, but I think someone on Facebook, I think it's Eric.
Yes, Eric. Yes, Eric wants to know, how old was this man and staying sexually active?
Oh, the one in Sri Lanka? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, as far as I knew, and I was in communication with him until right before he died. By the way, he predicted his own death. He said, I got a heart problem. My heart's weak. I'm going to lay down. I think I'm going now. And he died.
Yeah.
But the point is that he was active until, and as far as I know, right up to the end of the last year of his life, he was still sexually active. Yeah.
And how old was he?
He was 98.
Okay, 98. Okay.
Now, also, I want to also answer your question directly too about ED. Is that ED is occurring not inside of just, we think of the reproductive organs, but see, it's a lot of sex happens in the brain.
Yes, it does.
If the brain is working, and the adrenals are working, and the thyroid and the hypothalamus, and if we are inspired by life, and we're taking good care of ourselves as men, and we're exercising, we're doing these basic things, then it's not so hard to solve these problems.
Right. And can I just add one other really quick? I had a patient who actually came because he thought he had a problem with ED, and it was a problem with his wife. He went out of town to another country and ran into an ex-girlfriend and came back and told me, I don't have a problem with ED.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem he was having was within the relationship with his wife.
Right, that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot of times. and a person will think, this is my problem, this is what's going on in my body, but it's actually something within the relationship that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about, before also, is what men are often not authentic about what lights them up. I'll ask them simple stuff. Now, there's the medical side of it, and there's the herbal side, but that gets into a lot of minutia. We don't have time for it today, but it's in the book. A lot of that's in the book, and then some of it's more clinical that we have to do clinically. But there's, I often ask men. I say, "Well, what lights you up?" And they go, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure." Or they'll say something. I'm saying, well, there's no lights with it, because I'm trained to see if their eyes. Their eyes never lie. Like, no, there's no lights with that. I'm like, okay. You have to get beyond their mind. I said, well, what really, really lights you up? Oh, when she wears red underwear, and this kind. I'm like, okay, there's lights with that. Okay, well, why don't you do that? Oh, she doesn't like red. Tell her that it's about what you like.
Okay.
So they'll go back, and so I said, well, I said just tell her, this is what really lights you up, and then tell her to try it, and then they go in. I said, even better yet, go to the store with her and buy it for her. Women love to go shopping, so let's just say, look, I'm going to take you shopping, and then you go in the dressing room and you have her try it all right there, and you go, oh, whoa, now that works, right? Mm-hmm. And then again, she's going to see your eyes and go, okay, I'm buying this right now. And so she's going to get the clue. So a lot of it's really that simple, believe it or not, because men are very visual, and we have to just acknowledge that that's just a fact. We're very, very visual. And by nature, it's just not that women aren't visual. It's just that predominates our brain. It's just through evolution. That's what predominates our what we're focused on. We were hunters and so forth, so we're looking at, the sky and hunting birds.
Not to cut you off, but we do have a caller. Caller,
Sure.
Please state your name and where you're calling from, and your question and caller in advance. Thank you for calling.
Hi, my name is Kayla, and I'm calling from Antelope Valley. Hello, doctors.
Hi, Kayla.
Hello, Kayla.
My question is, if there are studies that link pesticides to ADHD, and they can determine what causes it in some children, why can't there be a cure for it? If you know the cause,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't there be some factors that would help cure ADHD that are linked to pesticides?
Well, excellent question. What's the prevailing dogma in science and medicine today, and the government, is trying to, in my opinion, avoid liability. So they're blaming it on you and your genes. It's all about genetic studies. But what they're not saying is there is a correlation, like you say, and that there is a way to get those out of our bodies. That's why I wrote this book. But all of that is after the fact. We don't want to be debating this after the fact that you have a child with a birth defect because you didn't clear your body of these pesticides before conception. And these pesticides are estrogenic. They're very estrogenic, and they cause all kinds of havoc to an embryological brain or the fetal brain 1,000 times worse than it would in our bodies. Because we're thinking, well, my boyfriend or my husband looks healthy, he looks really healthy, but you test the sperm and there's no sperm. So we can't go by our old standards is one important thing to focus on. And there is really practical things that are in the book that I go through that you can do in terms of diet, herbs, supplements, and different lifestyle changes you can make to dramatically remove these toxins from your body. And that's the whole point, because after the fact, it's too late. So it's not, the cure isn't the correct word, because they have like a kind of like a monopoly on that word. And then,
okay.
And so we can't use that word cure. What's more appropriate to say, and it's even better.
Not to cut you off, this was such a great question. And we're going to bring you back, Dr. Dittmann, because there's so much to your book that we didn't even touch. And so we're going to be bringing you back. I just got a cue here that we only have less than 30 seconds. Actually, we should be closing now. So what I'm going to ask, caller, please stay tuned listening. You're a faithful listener, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. But please tune in, and maybe we should bring you back next week to do part 2.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. That'll be so wonderful. Plus, there are about 14 other callers on the board here.
So
the lights are lit up here. So
let's just bring you back next week to do part 2. How about
Wonderful.
it, Dr. Dittmann?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much, everyone out there that's listening today, for being a fan for future generations.
Yes, we'll bring you back next week. Okay? And then we'll do part 2. And we'll title it a little differently, because I think a lot of it was people was thinking, oh, I've already had my children, so I don't need to listen to this. So we're going to word it a little differently. So I want to say in closing, thank you so much for listening to the Cherilyn Lee Show with your host, Dr. Cherilyn Lee, and your co-host, Belinda Foster. And repeat after me, please. I am
so
grateful
that
I am
a magnet
for miracles. Have a wonderful and blessed